well. So without further delay, Rue, why don't you just tell us a little bit about, the origin story of the American Perimeter Trail? What is it, and how did you get here?
The origin story. Hey, thank you so very much. Thank you for having me here. It's completely an honor. And what happened with the American Perimeter Trail is I was at a ski resort, and it suddenly hit me. I was already a triple crowner, so I'd already thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail, and it just kind of struck me as being not necessarily a hike, because that's not that interesting, to be honest with you. Like, backpackers out here, we backpack all sorts of stuff or whatever, and we get we get acknowledged for that, whether being a triple crowner or whatever. But honestly, it's not that interesting. It's just kind of like, you wanted to go do that, so good for you. You know what I mean? Good for you. But I had another perspective, which is not better or worse or whatever, but I knew right off the bat that it was going to be creating like a conservation corridor, 14,000 miles, around the United States. And so then I just basically sat on it for 10 years. I was already a triple crowner. I already had like a lot of backpacking experience, but it just was not the right time for me, I guess. And so then in 2019, it kind of came to me where you either need to have this experience or don't have it. And I decided at that point that I wanted to have this kind of experience, but I always knew that it was going to be a much bigger project, conservation effort than me. But I guess I knew that if I backpacked it, then there were people that were going to kind of get interested in what I was doing. I could have done all of it from home, but I really cared about what I was doing, and so I knew if I went out on the road and did that sort of thing, that was going to add up in a different kind of way. I didn't necessarily want it that way, but that's what happened. So
it became its own experience, took on a life of its own. Well, I have, looked briefly at the map, and if people saw kind of the little graphic that we shared around when we were advertising this talk, people got a little snippet of, or they got a vague idea of where the trail goes or where it would go. But for people who haven't looked at a map yet, can you give us a brief description of where you're hoping that it would be?
Yeah, as far as the nonprofit is concerned, our mission and our vision has to do with the perimeter of the United States. So even though at times I didn't go in that direction, that is ultimately what we were trying to seek to do. We wanted to go farther south and southeast, and also north and northeast, but there was a pandemic. There was a global pandemic, and so I did the best I could with it. I made mistakes as far as going up through Nevada and through Death Valley, there's been a lot of people that have asked me how the heck did you do that? Because there is no through hike in Death Valley. There isn't, but I did it, and I just will not give them the information because we're going to go further south and it's not safe. It's not okay. So as far as like, as far as me like going through the different areas, some of it's not safe, and we really cannot take the trail there, and I won't. So, that's kind of how it worked out. And so we have tried to stay to the contiguous lower 48 and hike around there as best as possible. With that being said, like also wilderness travel. So we're not traveling on roads or in parks or whatever. So, I did the best I could there, and I have to go back and correct a bunch of it. So
trial and error. I mean, this is a huge endeavor to undertake, right? So not going to get everything right on the first try.
yeah, I tried.
Yeah. Could you maybe share with us a couple of your, I guess not, you don't have to tell us where the trail goes everywhere, but maybe like a couple of your highlights of your, places that you're most excited about the American Perimeter Trail crossing through?
Oh, sure. The thing is that we have used some of the longer trails, shared with them. We have a really good partnership with the Continental Divide Trail Association. And so we have like some of these good contacts, but honestly, like I didn't use the Appalachian Trail. So when you see me coming up that piece of the portion, it looks like I used the Appalachian Trail. I never did. I never stepped a foot on the Appalachian Trail. And I don't think we're probably going to do that for the Pacific Crest Trail either, because we're a conservation organization. And so it's not that interesting to use areas and places that are already brought into the public sector. So we're kind of looking at different areas. So, I think we've got a really great connection as far as not using the Appalachian Trail. And though we have used the Pacific Crest Trail in certain spots, we're not going to use that going forward. There's too many people. It's just not that interesting as far as being a conservationist. So
I think that's an interesting topic, and I want to ask you another question about that, but I do see now that we have two questions that have come in the last few minutes, and I don't want to ignore people. So I think this is related to when you were talking about coming through Death Valley. Mary Ann asked a question about not safe how, like what was not safe about that part of the route.
yeah. Oh, thank you so very much for that. Was that Mary?
Mary Ann.
Okay. Thank you so very much for that, Mary. What happened is like there's no water, and you could probably already assume that. I was asleep because I often cowboy camped in that area, because why would you set up a tent? Like, doesn't really matter. You just sleep under the stars.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up at like 2:00 in the morning or something. And I heard something going on back behind me. I wasn't exactly sure. So I like grabbed my headlamp and was trying to look back there. And there was a fox
Oh.
I held my water because it was that important. It's like, it's that important. Like
Mm-hmm.
I put it under my shirt, like I had a hold of it. And while I was sleeping, this fox grabbed it. A platypus, like I don't know what you call them.
Like a camelback or a
Camelback or whatever. Yeah,
uncomfortable.
yeah. Basically, so they pulled it out of me while I was sleeping, and then I woke up, and I was like, didn't know what was going on. I'm looking for my headlamp. I look back, and the fox has pulled my camelback, my platypus, or whatever, pulled it out from underneath my arms, and it is drinking from the bite valve. I can't make this stuff up. And so it is there, like chewing, biting on the bite valve. And I was like, obviously I was like irate. I don't know, like
Yeah.
I wasn't angry at the fox, but I was like, get out of here, like I'm screaming, yelling. It takes off, and it takes off with the bladder. It starts running. So now I'm getting out of my sleeping bag as quick as I can. And I'm like up with the flashlight running after this fox. Hey, drop it, and it dropped it. And basically, like, around the bite valve, it was all chewed to all hell, and a bunch of my water was gone.
Oh
And
no.
so I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die out here in Death Valley. I don't have any water, but it was enough water for me to go on from there. And that's why I haven't shared that, because it's just, I I got through, like, it was okay, but I can't even imagine. I just can't imagine,
Yeah.
so.
Especially adverse conditions. I think most backpacking trips, you'll get yourself into some kind of adverse conditions, but that sounds like next level
It's
adverse.
kind of next level, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Mhm.
So,
Nice.
and I just don't, I really don't want people going there. I mean, it's too dangerous. And
Mhm.
so,
Yeah.
and maybe a fox like grabs your water or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Wildlife's very curious. I had a raccoon steal my toothbrush once, so I know a little how you feel.
okay.
So we got another question from a few minutes ago, and I apologize for not knowing exactly what he's referring to. This is from Ronald. He's asking, did you slip across the Mexican border at some point in your travels when you were on that part of the?
Yeah, I did, and that's also like why I'm going back to Southern California and Arizona and stuff in a couple of weeks here, because it's not safe. It's just not safe.
That
So,
route, you mean?
yeah,
You
it's
pick a
not.
different route.
No, it's not safe, and I, doesn't really matter if I want it to be that way or not. But I probably traveled for 1,000 miles along the Mexican United States border, and it's not safe. And so we're gonna move the trail further north. And
Mhm.
it's just like, yeah, don't do that.
Trial and
Don't do
error, right?
it. Don't do it. I mean, I wanted to be on that piece of the perimeter, but honestly, it's just not safe. And I got stopped all the time. I rarely had a good night sleep. Um, it's not a good situation. So, I think that if you're hiking maybe the Pacific Crest Trail or the Continental Divide Trail, and you end there or you're starting from there, that's one thing. To be there for a day or two, but to be following that for like 1,000 miles, it was not a good situation. It's just not a good situation. So, I mean,
Chandra?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And so yeah, I've got one for you. So you're talking about safety as something, I mean, you're designing this trail, so you get to kind of like different considerations, and as an experienced, through hiker, I'm sure you've got lots of those factors in mind. So safety is one of them, but what other things do you look for in thinking about what will be, part of the official route at some point?
yeah, so I never considered this as a long distance backpacker kind of hike. That's one of the misunderstandings where I go on podcasts and interviews and people are like, oh, this is the next big kind of through hike or whatever. I never intended. I am a through hiker. Okay. I have backpacked these different miles. I never had any interest in that going forward. So for me, it's more of the conservation piece and folks who want to have a picnic or stop with their family. I was just never really interested in the long distance part of it, but because I did the long distance stuff, I have some recognition around it. But the American Perimeter Trail is not, it's not America's next biggest through hike. It's not that. It's about families. It's about friends.
I love that.
It's about people connecting. I'm sorry.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah. If you want to through hike this thing, go for it, but don't do it on my account, because I think it's a bad idea. And here's the thing. Okay, so so we have, like, for instance, the Appalachian Trail. Okay, there are 1,000 or 2,000 people or whatever who try to through hike that every year. Good for them. I'm rooting for you. But there is like millions of people on the East Coast that experience and have that recreational experience every single backpacking season. And so that's what I care about. If you want to be a long distance hiker and you want to go hike the Appalachian or hike the American Perimeter Trail or whatever you want to do, good for you. I'm with you. But that is not what I'm doing, and I never cared about it. My experience is more about creating this for everyone who lives around this perimeter. And so that's kind of more what I'm into. So
we got a couple questions sort of related to this. Maybe I have another one from Marianne that I will get to in a second as maybe sort of a segue question, but an anonymous attendee, which I didn't know we could have an anonymous attendee. Are you envisioning this then as something that could be done in short hikes over a lifetime? Or I guess adding on to that question, is it more just so that everybody has something near them if you live in that part of the country.
Yeah, the thing is, like, we have long trails in different states. Okay. Texas does not. Mississippi does not. Louisiana does not. So with that being said, it's the American Perimeter Trail. But what we have found, what I have found, so people are like buying into this. So they're like, this is the Texas Trail. This is the Louisiana Trail. It's the American Perimeter Trail. But they have buy-in to this. And so, the long distance, like I said, I did that. I'm doing that. But it's not that interesting to me as far as like going forward. More going forward, what's interesting to me is the Texas Trail, the Louisiana Trail. Let's give them their trail.
Yeah, we're spoiled rotten in Oregon.
Yeah, I know we are. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, sorry. Could you maybe speak a little bit more about, I think what I'm hearing you say is that the American Perimeter Trail as a concept is a way to get, I guess, maybe get investment from like private landowners to do like a conservation easement or something across property that they own to connect landscapes, or I guess, how do you envision this working in places like the South where there's tons of private land and not that much public land?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. And I think this is my life's work. Okay. So I'm not going to see this in my lifetime. Okay. Ben Mackay didn't see the Appalachian Trail in his lifetime. Clinton C. Clark did not see the PCT, the Pacific Crest Trail, in his lifetime. I don't expect to see this in my lifetime either. So essentially it's like we are using different tracks and like we're finding our way however we can. Okay. As far as building the American Perimeter Trail, this is going to take decades, and I have no problem with that. And Texas is going to be a challenge. Louisiana is going to be a challenge. Texas, we have 1.2%, I think, of the entire huge landmass that is Texas is public. So it's all private land. So how do we do that? Well, I have an idea. And so I know I get shut down all the time because people are like, well, how would you even possibly do this or that or the other thing? It's possible. It's just probably going to take decades, and I'm okay with that. A lot of people thought that I hiked this trail, and so then that's that. Not the case at all. This is a evolving and an engaging kind of cool process that we all get to make this decision as we go forth. And so, I have an idea about where I think the trail should be or how that works. I have my own ideas, but ultimately, it's going to be more collaborative than that. So,
Rue, could you talk a little bit about who are you partnering with on this journey, on this process? Are there other organizations that you're like in different states, that are kind of like helping you maybe with, sort of logistic support, but also, on some of these questions of, whose land are you on, and is it okay?
right.
And how can we help conserve it? I'd
Right.
love to hear about those people and groups.
Right. So the interesting thing that's been fun for me is like, as an organization, we have challenges because everyone is all over the place. They're not, the organization, the conference is based here in Bend, Oregon. But I'm the only one here in Bend, Oregon. Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, New Mexico, etc. These people are all over the place. So the way that works is basically I connect with these different organizations and we just start a dialogue. So for instance, I'll give you an example here. We are probably not going on the Appalachian Trail. Okay. I didn't when I was hiking, and we're probably not going to do that. But we do have partners with the Pinhoti Trail in Alabama and also the Great Eastern Trail. So we tend to partner, and when I say we, the board of directors, that is the conference, we tend to partner with these other folks, and it's not popular. It's not popular, and it's not necessarily easy. I mean, it takes a lot of work. But that is essentially how we go about this process, is looking to the local people. So, like I said before, Texans are going to build the Texas Trail. Alabama, that is going to be Alabamans. We invite them into our board meetings. We have conversations with them. A good friend of mine is Nimblewell Nomad. So, him and I have a lot of conversations around this. It's going to need to be local people, and that is the way that we've gone about it. So I live here in Bend, Oregon. I can say whatever I want to say, or blah, 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 and so on and so forth. But the fact of the matter is, these people that are involved in their own states, their own region, they're the ones that are going to do the work, and we are going to be there to support them. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was thinking about putting up a couple of photos that people could see some of the stuff that you saw along the way. I just have a couple that that we pulled out of your show or your album, Rue. So yeah, just I wonder if you could maybe tell us a little bit about some of the places that most people don't maybe think about when it comes to taking a hike, like this picture. I mean, you're camping on the edge of a field by a pond, and it looks like maybe there's some structures nearby. Like, what sort of, did you enjoy all of the landscapes that you hiked through?
It's the thing that's different if you get off of the Triple Crown. Okay, so I'm a Triple Crowner, whatever. I hike the Appalachian Trail, I hike Pacific Crest Trail, blah, blah, blah. when you get off of those trails, people don't know. They see a person that's dirty and has a backpack on. And so I had, so I was detained 28 times during the course of this trip. Okay. I don't often talk about it. When you're off of the Appalachian Trail or the Continental Divide Trail, what ends up happening is people are very suspicious, you know, of what's going on. So when I was backpacking through these areas, it's very much improvisational. Every night I would climb into that tarp that you see right there, and I would have maps, and I would look at the maps and I would start sketching out ideas every night. This is in North Dakota, so there is not a long trail going through where I was right here. So I had to kind of sketch that out every night. That's what I did. And so it's a lonely sort of situation. You know, I left and I went south on the Pacific Crest Trail in 2019 from Oregon down into Southern California. And I didn't hike or backpack with anyone until I got to Southern California. And I met someone, and we backpacked together for like a week or two. And then I went the whole way across the country and the whole way back up. And no hikers, no backpackers, no people. And then a pandemic hit. Because keep in mind, like, I didn't know that when I left. The pandemic it just didn't happen. And so I was crossing the Mississippi and just didn't have any idea that there was a pandemic happening in this country. And I walked into a town that was supposed to be having like a big festival and stuff, and there was no one there. There was nobody, and there were signs on like restaurants. And so I called Layla, who is one of our board members, and said, "What the heck is going on?" And she's like, "Rue, we're in a global pandemic." I was like beside myself. You know, I didn't know what to do. And so that continued on for a while. And, you know, we did it in a very ethical and just in a very ethical kind of way, which meant I never went on to the Appalachian Trail. I never hitchhiked. I never went into towns. I basically was, Layla would send me packages every week or maybe every 2 weeks. And so I would see a postmaster and kind of talk their ear off because I hadn't talked to anyone in 2 weeks. And they would give me my package, and then I would go from there. And if what I needed wasn't in there, then it just didn't happen. Like one time I needed a toothbrush and there was no toothbrush in the package. So because I have backcountry skills, I knew how to brush my teeth and do that in the backcountry, but it requires trees and wintergreen and mint and different herbs that I picked in order to do that. And that's kind of, you know, it was an interesting situation along those lines. And I am not a recreational backpacker. I used to be, but now I'm a professional backpacker. So if I had stepped on the Appalachian Trail or done any of that, my sponsors and my contributors or whatever would have been gone. So, so I had to do things in a different kind of way. I never had phone service for the most part, and I couldn't charge my phone except for every maybe 2 or 4 weeks. So, so it's a different kind of situation. I want to speak more to that, but I guess I don't really know how to explain it. I mean, I don't know what it's like for a human being to be alone for months at a time. But that's what I did. And I can tell you it's not good. It's not natural. It's not healthy. People shouldn't do that. And I did. And I had some consequences as far as that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. When earlier you talked a bit about, running into COVID. And so I think you've explained, I was thinking, what was the most, challenging thing about doing so much of this during the pandemic? But I think you've answered that. I think it might be having to be alone and on your own for so long. And that's really interesting.
I mean, it's like, and I'm not a victim to this. Like, I decided to do that, but I'm going south here in 2 or 3 weeks to go do some scouting in Southern California. I couldn't get away from backpackers if I tried. But the APT was this way. So, I mean, if I tried to stay away from people during the course of this trek, there's no way I could have, there's no way. It's just, as far as being that lonely and without people, I couldn't do it again if I tried. It was the pandemic. It was everything. I mean, there's no way. There's no way. You can't go on the Appalachian Trail. You can't go on the Pacific Crest Trail without seeing people. You can't do it. It's not possible. Someone who says they're a solo backpacker, no. Like, no, it's not possible. However, like during this situation, and I never intended that, but when I left California, started heading across the United States, and then on the northern tier of the United States, I didn't see any backpackers. I was by myself the entire time, and I don't think you could do that again if you tried. I don't think you could. I don't think it's possible.
Very unique circumstances and timing, like a once in a lifetime opportunity to be the loneliest man on the earth. It seems like.
Well, I mean, I guess that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, or the most the luckiest, I guess, depending on who you ask. I do want to pivot really briefly. We have a couple questions that we can get to in a minute or two, but I'm going to pass the hosting baton over to Chandra. I know that you have a couple quick things that you want to say before we pivot to just straight Q&A. But since it is 6:47, I just wanted to make us aware of time and make sure that we have enough time to get to these kind of remaining questions, because we've got a few that are stacking up now.
Yeah. Thanks, Jamie. One of the related questions that came in from Peter are around how would you go about asking someone if you could camp on their private property, or did you run into that?
I
How do you
ran into
explain
that.
what you're doing?
Yeah. The thing is that I'm like not shy, but I don't present that way really. And so when I was on the Pacific Crest Trail, I'm already a triple crowner, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And people would be like, "Oh, are you through hiking?" And I would be like, "No, I'm not. I'm hiking in this section down through here and whatever." And then they didn't want to talk to me. They were just like, okay, section hiker. And when I was traveling through a good part of the Southwest, in the Southeast, people did not see me as like this backpacker that's creating the American Perimeter Trail. They were just basically like, this is a homeless vagabond, basically. So, that's what I talked about earlier about being stopped so often. And so, really in Texas, like, it was this improv that I was talking about earlier. So you basically, like, I would start off the day and I would try to figure out, like, I have the map here. I would try to figure out how can I traverse this. And sometimes there would be like a pickup truck in the distance, and I'd run them down and I'd say, hey, how you doing? Do you own this, or what's going on? And they say, I'm a ranch hand, or maybe they owned it or whatever. And I said, is it okay if I go through here and I camp here or whatever? I showed them the map, and they would be okay with that. But it's not really something that you can write a guidebook about, or kind of like speak to how that process works. It was day to day. And, for most backpackers and triple crowners and stuff, they don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense to them because they're on this trek. They have an app on their phone or whatever, and they just go this direction. So for me to explain that to a lot of long distance backpackers, they kind of don't really get it because you're just in a constant process of that. And, it was like the best thing for me, as far as like developing my backpacking. It was great, but it was very stressful. It was stressful all the time. I got shot at. I had guns held on me. The whole bit.
It definitely takes a different set of skills.
Yeah. It's a different, I had someone who contacted me who is trying to hike like a loop around the United States. And he asked me, how do you get through Texas? How do you get through Louisiana? And he wanted water sources and camp spots and all of that. And I had to like basically break his heart and be like, There is no guidebook. It's pretty much you have to be engaged and aware and going through this process from day to day. And you never know what's going to happen from day to day. It's like maybe you come into a town and you have a resupply package there. So you have to go get your resupply at the post office. And then it's like late at night and you're not exactly sure what to do. And so then you ask the postmaster, what can I do or whatever, or you just go and camp at like a church and apologize in the morning if they're even there. I mean, it's not, if you are used to having an app and all this information like you would on any of the Triple Crown, this is not that sort of deal. So.
Interesting. Well, Rue, I need to talk for a couple of minutes about Oregon Wild and how this might connect to your work. And then I think we can have time for a couple of more questions. Is that okay? Is that good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again and put up a picture. Cool. Yeah, and I hate to drag us out of that because this is great to hear about, but yeah, this is kind of our job is to connect what you're talking about with the work that Oregon Wild does. So so for nearly 50 years now, Oregon Wild has been working to protect and restore our amazing wildlands and wildlife and waters here in Oregon, the places that most people go to hike or bike or camp or have picnics with their family and friends. And I'm also a hiker and definitely not a through hiker or a backpacker for that matter, which surprises some people, but get me out on any trail any day and I'm pretty happy. So I was lucky enough to write a guidebook for trails through ancient forests across the state. And which, is definitely, it's a lifelong passion to keep hiking in these forests, but, a little bit different than your lifelong passion of defining this trail and your vision for the American Perimeter Trail.
I don't think it's that different.
And I just wanted to note that, this was the stuff that I looked at and to plan my trips. And it was improvisational in many ways, but I didn't, I wasn't going out for days on end. I just looked at a map and figured out a few days at a time and did some day hikes. So definitely not as involved as some of the stuff that you had to get into, but so, here in Oregon, most of the places that I hiked for the Ancient Forest Guide and where most people get a chance to recreate is on public land. So I just wanted to throw this map up, and I think it would be great to hear a little bit more from you about your conservation plans. When I go hiking and a lot of what Oregon Wild supporters care about are forests, and most of the intact, never logged forests, the ones that I love hiking in the most, are found on public lands. And on this map that I have up here now, we're showing intact forests, so blocks of forests that are 1,000 acres or bigger that have never been logged and don't have roads through them. So they're functioning as great habitat and as ecosystems. And only a small proportion of those actually have really high standards of protection, like wilderness or wild scenic river corridors or national monuments or national parks. So there's still a lot out there that's unprotected. And that surprises a lot of people. And I think probably you've experienced some places along the way that have been pretty hammered
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
used some friends. So, hopefully in Oregon, wherever your trail goes, we can help be a part of that. But what we're up against in protecting some of these last forests are pretty big. So I threw up some examples here of some of the issues that we deal with at Oregon Wild, and some of it's actual land management, like grazing and logging and building roads. But some of it is, the erosion of environmental laws that help protect these lands, or it's big money interests that are continuing to try to erode
Mhm.
laws,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
do more resource extraction. So we try to draw attention to those things, but also to solutions. And so I don't like bumming people out too much. And one of the best ways that I've found in all my years at Oregon Wild, I apologize for that grainy picture, to get people interested in caring and taking care of places is to get them outside. And so, leading lots of hikes and in groups, just, showing what is out there. And I think that's what's great about your vision too, is like, if there's places in people's, nearby where they can go, they're going to get interested in helping to protect those places. So from my perspective, one of the things that I think is most important is from taking the step of, I want to go on a hike, or I've gone on a hike in an area, to working to protect or advocating for it, is just learning a whole lot about the place that you are. And so that can come in a lot of different forms. So I've listed a couple of questions here that I would think about asking if you're going out anywhere really to hike or camp or enjoy the outdoors. Learn a little bit about the natural history, the plants, the animals, because you might see them out there, and that just helps you be a better informed nature lover, I guess. Think about what people have made their home on this landscape for, millennia, and look up who those people are, what traditions they had, how they use the land. Who owns or manages the land today? And, in Oregon, a lot of the places on public lands are managed by the Bureau of Land Management or the U.S. Forest Service. And you can find, they're public agencies that serve the people and manage the land on our behalf. And so there's ways of getting involved and learning more about what's being proposed. And knowing who makes decisions about the land that you're recreating on. So is it the Forest Service, or, is it Congress? And then that can help inform, what you might do about a place. And I'm going to skip this one. So, lots of things you can do to take action once you learn a little bit more. Of course, getting involved in groups like Oregon Wild, but, you're talking about the whole country, and lots of different groups that people can get involved in. When there's actions to take on public lands, like click through, take some action. You can write comments on projects happening on public lands, write letters to the editor supporting conservation, contact your legislators if you're concerned about environmental degradation that you see, and then, help get your friends out there to see places for themselves and become advocates also. One final pitch is, help battle climate change. And one of the best ways of doing that is protecting forests. I think that's going to make all of our recreational experiences better into the future, as well as keep our planet a livable place. And we just helped launch a brand new campaign called the Climate Forest Campaign. That's asking the Biden administration to put an end to all mature and old-growth logging across the entire country on public lands. And this is would be a huge step in protecting those last intact forests here in Oregon, but also across the country. So I invite everybody to check out the climate-forest.org website and take some action there too. So I think that's all I have. Yes. Okay. I will stop my share. And Rue, if you have any comments on any of what I just said and maybe connect it to your conservation vision, that might be a great way to end.
w- w- when it's gone, it's gone. Okay. So I don't like to be a militant conservationist in those terms, but I've been in this work for 20 years. And so, like, I appreciate the work that you're doing. And I don't want to be that way just to be kind of negative. But the honest to God thing is, when it's gone, it's gone. So, you know, my work is to try to bring it into some of the public sector because it's the best resource that we have. I would like to be a conservationist and maybe in a different kind of way, or but I mean, honestly, it's kind of, that's kind of the best bet that we have. And the thing is, like, I I started getting into this long distance backpacking thing because I had lived several summers or whatever in Western Europe and different countries. And then I realized at that point in time that I'd never really even seen my own country. And so I was like, how do I discover America? And this was my way of doing that. And so doing, I saw that we have this amazing expanse of land and that it should be protected. It's unlike anything on the entire planet. Okay. There is no Appalachian Trail in another country. There is no Continental Divide Trail. There is no Pacific Crest Trail. There is no North Country Trail. There is not any of this. This is specifically an American ideal and specifically an American concept of wilderness and of areas untouched. You're not going to find it. You're going to find it in some other places in the world. We have this. And it's not lost on me, and it's not lost on the community members that we have that are coming on to the conference. This is a unique opportunity that we have here. I didn't choose where I was born. I was born here. I didn't have anything to do with it. But I do have something to do with how I proceed from here. And that's like Oregon Wild is, an example of that. We have a unique opportunity here. One of my, fortunately, like through this, I've gotten to meet a bunch of different people. And one of them who I met, he lives in Massachusetts. And in 1975, he did a long trek. And he tells me when I speak with him, he says, "Thank you, Rue, for the work that you're doing for my grandkids. I won't see my work in my lifetime. I won't. I don't have kids. I don't have family. I don't care. I do have nephews. I do care about the next generation." And so he tells me, "Thank you, Rue, for doing this for those who are coming." And you know, we have board members. Okay, so we have like Layla, you know, who's a board member. She has, she's a single mom. She's got 4 little ones, you know. It matters to me. This is the sort of thing that we put forward. We get an opportunity to do it. I'm leaving this world better than I found it. I'm determined. It wasn't my fault that I came into a world that was this way or whatever, but I'm determined to leave it different than I found it.
That's awesome.
And the people who are out here listening and involved with Oregon Wild and the conversation this evening, I'm not preaching to the choir. You get it. Like, you all get it. You all get it.
We appreciate you for doing this work, and look forward to, you know, the future of connecting to places all around the country when you've you know, shared more about the trail and various places across the country. I think it's great. I think we'll all keep watching. We'll make sure we put the website for the American Perimeter Trail in the follow-up so that folks can check it out and support you in however they wish. But yeah, thank you for being with us tonight. It's time to call it an evening. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Thanks for everyone for joining us. And yeah, best wishes on your next scouting adventure.
Thank you so very much.
All right. Well, I'm gonna.
And I guess I didn't say this. I'm actually finishing the American Perimeter Trail here in Bend, Oregon, in late July. And we're gonna have a celebration, and I look forward to seeing all of you here, but that will be the technical closing of the loop for me. And I'm really excited about that. But I'm more excited about the work that goes forth from here. So
awesome. Okay, we'll watch for that and come join you. All right. Thank you and good night.